Hello again, it's Marxist, and this is 10 Ubers and how they were used, episode 1. I hope to make a series of this, and I'll be releasing it probably weekly. We're going to watch 10 Ubers that were committed by invite teams, and then have a short discussion about what happened in those Ubers, and how those Ubers were used, and why what was done worked or didn't work. And it's going to be across a variety of maps from this ESEA season. It's not going to be from one particular match, although you probably will see as the series goes on a bit of recycling. I hope to get about 2 or 3 episodes out about this particular topic because new teams have trouble utilizing Uber and even some IM teams. This is Uber number 1. What's the situation? The situation is that Try is getting ready to push last. Try has Uber, the team he is attacking does not. They're going to take in 2 players into this Uber. The other Uber will be Clockwork. The point of watching this situation will be borne out as we watch the Uber happen. What happened? The Uber got completely obliterated by the utility classes that were run by Mixup despite their not having Uber, and it results in the death of KBK, most notably, which makes it more likely for Mixup to hold in the future, and also gives them some ability to pressure forward and potentially retake second. What happened there was that the tryhards knew that they had their Uber advantage and expected an easy roll to last, but they didn't take care to investigate that fact and really only took precautions against the heavy. That's why Clockwork was in. The heavy was going to be dealt with by the scout. Try was going to assist him in that endeavor. The sentry gun made that a non-starter. They had over 70% advantage going into that push, more or less. They could have taken the time to spam the gun down first, and then they would have had a much easier push because the only utility class they would have really had to deal with would be the heavy, soaking all of the damage. So, the moral of the story is, if you know you've got a big advantage, there's no reason to not take a little bit of time, especially on last pushes, to make sure you're not pushing into something that's going to be a disaster when you should have your big advantage. If you've got a large advantage, be happy with it. Make sure that it doesn't go to waste. Don't rush things. In our second situation, we'll be watching Try again from the tryhards, who uses the Uber in an Uber versus Uber situation, but with a pick advantage. KBK got forced at the door because Mixup spammed. Try was forced to jump into a heavy in order to force their Uber, and then immediately backed off. As he's backing up, because they had the 2-man advantage that they did, even though the Uber doesn't look pretty and he doesn't get any immediate frags, his team that was waiting at choke is told by Try that they've come down after him and to get in, or they force their way in. I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. But in any case, it forces Mixup to stare at them at Big Door. They didn't have the resources on hand to deal with that situation despite running a heavy, and as such, people run through choke and basically annihilate Mixup, and it ends with only Harblue being left alive, and a successful mid-cap follows for the tryhards. And while our next Uber's concept may seem relatively simple, pushing Uber versus no Uber, this particular Uber illustrates a good point, and it'll be done by Platinum against the tryhards, same match that all the other Ubers have come from so far. What happens here is Platinum pops Uber into the enemy team, who's rather close, but they manage to escape. What Platinum does here is he chases a frag within the local area. You can do this too, but with specific conditions which are met here in this Uber, which is why I show it. The entirety of the tryhards had managed to escape and were beyond being killed by Platinum or any other member of his team. Blaze was trapped in, and thus his chasing of this frag is okay. It's not something you want to do if a whole bunch of people are sticking around. Everyone else had left the area, they had left mid, so it's okay to get this pick. The reason he's so focused on getting this pick is that he knows that if they can get one, especially two picks, somewhere at mid, regardless of KBK's Uber or not having Uber, they'll probably get second very shortly and get ready to push last, which KBK's Uber or not having a Uber won't really make a difference. It's difficult to push out of last with Uber advantage on most maps, particularly Goalie Wash. So, in the end, Platinum just wants to get frags with this Uber, and he manages to get one. Mix-Up later goes on to take second. The important thing to remember here is that everyone left. Don't chase a single individual kill if there are still other people in the area. Our fourth Uber is again from Platinum. We see Platinum looking at the flank, and this is because Harblue, his roamer, one of his flank players, has just died. So he needs to check and make sure that the enemy team is not flooding through the choke. He also knows that he's going to be Ubered on immediately, and that Uber is going to try to push him away and allow the tryhards to gain the second point. So now we see Try trying to come in. Plat knows their combo's a choke. Plat lands some rockets on Try, but that's not the important thing. When Try comes through, you hear a sticky jump in Platinum's ears. That's Seagull getting away. The only thing that could make this Uber not work now that Plat knows where their combo is if Try gets onto Seagull and makes Smacka flash Seagull to keep the demo alive. Seagull's gone, so Platinum very easily handles Try, and then as soon as Try goes past him to look for frags, Plat knows the only other frags or damage around is Seagull, who just jumped away. So Plat just pushes behind, forces KBK to think about what's going to happen to Dummy, my demo man, and that blocks the Uber completely. So even though Plat had a disadvantage there, his utilization of the Uber allows his team to hold the second point despite their disadvantage. Along with Seagull very quickly getting out of the area, the situation here is that Blank is about to push mid. However, his medic gets forced almost immediately, basically as soon as he gets the Uber, very early into the push of mid. What Blank does that's good to show here is that he doesn't panic. You see him walk in, Nos gets jumped, Blank takes out the bomber, but Nos is forced. Then you see Blank look around for other kills, try to take good position, try to take height advantage, and then eventually just lock out Mix-Up to keep them from being able to re-push right away without an Uber, and in fact Mix-Up is never able to push back. So what happened? Blank did manage to get a pick, which meant that Mix-Up could not push in an Uber versus no Uber situation, particularly because Blank took such good positioning. The moral of this story is, if your medic gets forced, take good positioning, try and get what picks are near, but if you have to leave the map area, so mid in this case, to try and get those picks, then it's not worth it. Just take a good position, try and lock them out. If anything, you'll hold the point for a little bit before they push you with their Uber advantage. In this particular situation, that doesn't happen because at the time Mason was playing medic for Mix-Up and he had recently just died. So they didn't have enough of an advantage to push off of, and they were too few alive to push right away with that. And it ends with the Madmen being able to hold mid for a significant period of time. Here we have a situation where Blank is pushing off of a pick advantage into an Uber v Uber situation. However, a member of his team dies early, and it forces him to back up. If we see Blank take an Uber, he gets up onto the spire, which is excellent positioning, and as soon as he gets there and pops the enemy Uber, a scout on his team dies, which forces him to pull back to choke in the interest of getting his supporting cast, i.e. his med and demo, out of this fight so that they don't lose. Unfortunately, he has to then jump back in to keep his demo man alive so that they can have a prayer of holding mid. So what happened? We see the danger of bringing in more than one person on an Uber, because if one of the other people dies in an Uber v Uber situation, you've lost. So we see Blank take good position, he has to give it up because he loses a player. And then in order to keep a player much more important than himself, his medic and his demo, alive, he has to go back in and sacrifice himself to keep them alive. It doesn't work. But that's the best that you can do in this situation. If you lose somebody early during your Uber, you may as well just bail out if it's Uber v Uber. In Uber number 7, we'll see another defensive Uber utilized when you have pick disadvantage. However, it goes a little bit differently, but shows the thought process that we saw earlier used by Platinum applied in a different situation with a different player, in this case AG's Rando. Here we see a few important things. Boink is down, so his flank is weak. Rando's looking at the window at all 3 doors at the same time. He sees the combo go to ground. He moves to exchange with them so he can get a close in-your-face Uber. Then he pushes behind to see if there's anything available. There isn't. He has to take good position to get his medic out and keep his demo alive. Unfortunately, they lose players and he's got to back out. He tries to get one more pick just to close out lower. So what happened? Rando got a good exchange and then pushes behind to try and find somebody who isn't Ubered to shoot. Unfortunately, during that time, the enemy's Uber gets into his unubered players, and his medic is unable to save them, which costs them the point. He then falls back to try and make sure that his med and demo and other important players who may still be alive get out, and still tries to turn that situation into a pick by trying to close off lower or punish whoever chased their med down there. Here we'll see in Uber number 8, Lansky push last with full Uber advantage against the Madmen, also on Gully Wash. Here we see that Lansky's just going to Uber in. He gets thrown back by a trap, but they're bringing in a scout as well. He tries to find anybody to damage because that's what you need to do when you have full Uber advantage. Just get any picks. Tag does bomb in. He manages to get an additional kill. So they've got 2 down, 3 down now, 4 down. Lansky goes direct to the point. That was essentially all done by the non-Uber players who were looked at by the Madmen. So what happened? Well, Lansky went in. He tried to do as much damage as he could, but as the Uber ended, he realized that he really hadn't done enough, and so he and Shade backed out to stay safe. Picks went down because of the players that weren't involved in the Uber getting in during the distraction of the Uber, who managed to get enough kills. With those kills secured, Lansky just goes straight to the point. There's no reason not to, and he ends up winning the round. It's a good example of not forcing the issue as Pocket. He realized that he hadn't really done what he was supposed to do, so he made sure that his medic got out alive so that they don't lose the round. Thankfully for HRG in that situation, their flank players come through with the big plays, and they still win the round. For Uber number 9, we're not even going to see an Uber. We're going to see a crits. And this is generally the way that Pockets behave at the higher levels during a crits. Although Nosferatu doesn't have Uber in this situation, the behavior is essentially the same. Okay, here we see Banny making his approach for the crits. The crits is popped. Lansky stays behind Shade. The reason he does that is so that if anybody tries to jump Banny, Shade turns around, flashes him, he gets an easy crits rocket kill. Banny succeeds in getting 2 kills, but not the medic. You don't really necessarily have to get the medic. Then Lansky focuses out the medic afterwards. What happened? Well, Lansky played the way he should as a Pocket. Banny managed to get 2 picks, which were pretty good picks, the Pocket and the demo. He didn't get the medic. People always think that your crits has to be focused on the medic. In this situation, it didn't, because the medic didn't have Uber, and even if Nosferatu did have Uber, he may not have been able to save blank or RR. In that case, Banny's going for kills would work just fine. The general rule of crits that I use is as long as you get 2 or 3 picks, that's plenty good enough for crits. Even if they've got Uber, you're probably still going to win. We see Lansky backing up Banny, waiting for frags, and then going in strong after the frags go down. And that's essentially exactly how it should be played as a Pocket running crits. And what would be a video about Uber exchanges and pockets if we didn't include TLR? So this is an old LAN demo, and the situation here is that it's Uber v Uber, no picks, and TLR gets an early force. Here we see Quantic trying to push in, but TLR forces their Uber. Then they sort of just ball up. They know that their Uber is going to be way better. He doesn't see anybody around, so he goes for the first person he can. He ends up finding the med there as well, and then is beset by 2 scouts, at which he begins shotgunning. So what happened? TLR forces their Uber early as they're going for a rat play, an extremely common occurrence on Granary 2nd. When a team wants to push, they'll go left like that. TLR reacts quickly, forces their Uber. He backs up so as to keep his own Uber from being forced, collects his team so that if the Uber comes on to them, then Harblue, who's playing medic at the time, can save them with their own Uber. Once TLR gets the Uber, he knows that he can basically go a little bit away from Harb, because the Uber is going to be so strong on him that it really doesn't matter where he goes. He's going to have tons of invincibility, whereas the other team is not. He ends up finding the medic, who's kind of just trapped out there, and then is beset by scouts, which he helps deal with because of the balled up nature of his team. So it shows you how to respond to a quick force. He just backs up, takes the superior position, and waits. And then once his own Uber is popped, he goes out and gets the kills and is aggressive. It differs from other defensive Ubers in this video because he didn't need to block and exchange Ubers with them. He could just back up because of how early they were forced and how far away the pocket soldier on the other team was. And that's 10 Ubers. This has been Marxist. I hope you found it to be helpful and enjoyable. And our next episode will be about medics in Uber.